Good morning, everybody. I am very pleased to Dave Tebo with us this morning from Hamilton, presenting on competency-based education. As many of you know, we've had a series that we kind of did part one and part two. And part one consisted of some of our national leaders and one of our Michigan leaders. And I mean, those 10 are being viewed by just a lot of people because we clearly, kind of grab some of the leaders in competency to share their visions with us. This particular part two, we're very proud to be presenting Michigan superintendents and assistant superintendents who are leading the way. So this webinar is being recorded. I'll want everybody to know that. And I certainly want to remind everybody that you can go to the edtechspecialist.com website. You'll see on the top bar, webinars, and that's where we're putting the archived versions. So you can not only see the one that you'll be viewing today, you can go back and see the one from last month, Dave Eichberg, and then you can also view the previous 10. So on this from EdTech Specialists is Lisa Sitkins and Mike Murray, and we're always very proud to be presenting these opportunities to learn and grow together. Some of the districts are using these as kind of a launch pad for conversations for PD and staff meetings. So if you're one of the listeners or if you're on with us right now, that's a good use of this to kind of go back and listen and explore and, kind of ignite some new thoughts with a lot of you. So I hope that's helpful. I also want to give you the format for asking questions. We want this to be a conversation with Dave and with each other, along with hearing his presentation. So if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat, and either, if it's time sensitive, we'll kind of jump in, or Lisa will read them later. We also provide you the opportunity to you can either put in the chat, or if there's a good moment, you can just step in and ask a question. Just unmute yourself and ask it right away. It's a great way to kind of get conversation going back and forth. So please don't hesitate with that. Again, this is being recorded, so just keep that in mind when you are, asking questions and that kind of a thing. Again, it is my pleasure to have Dave Tebo with us today. I'm very much looking forward to this. It's been interesting for me. I was in a session a few weeks ago, and one of the superintendents from the Michigan Co-op, and I'm going to talk briefly about that, was talking about his district a little bit. And every time I hear one of you guys that I know so well give information on your district, I'm always impressed that you're doing way more than I ever am aware of. And that was Matt Wandry, and he was doing a lot of things there. And I thought, oh, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And I'm sure that's the way this morning is going to be, too. Dave Tebo and Dave Eichberg are last two. This current superintendent, Dave, who's presenting, and then Dave Eichberg, are part of the Michigan Co-op. And I would encourage all of you who are listening to take a look at the website. It's www.mi-coop.com. These guys are really defining leadership in the state in many different ways. And, we're always looking for new leaders to join us. So that, I'm really proud of that group. In fact, one of the things that I was thinking about with them and their leadership role is that as I look back over the original 6 that, I kind of put together 7 years ago, all the original 6 are gone. They've retired. They've, gone on to other things. But all but one of those is still, it was a seamless transition. Seamless. And I think that to me said to me that one of the things about good leadership is that the initiatives and the mindset becomes systemic. And they can step away and it just keeps moving as though, they're still there. And this is not only true, obviously, for the people in the Michigan Co-op, but all of the people in the state right now, including Dave Richards and Mike Birdie, who are going to be presenting to us in the next couple of months. These guys are clearly pioneering for us. They're taking risks. They're out there doing things that they don't have a roadmap. I mean, there are a lot of other districts across the country that are doing some things, but you've got to look at your own demographic. You can't just take somebody's manual and follow it step by step. You can learn from each other, but you've got to really build this according to your demographic, because going to competency is huge. It's a huge transition. It's got to be systemic. So all that said, it is my pleasure to, Lisa, if you want to transition over to Dave. Dave, it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us this morning, and I'm very much looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Marcia. All right, so I'll jump in and get started, and hopefully everybody can see my screen. One of the things that I need to give as a precursor to this is that, we're on a journey, and this whole process takes time, and I appreciate Marcia sharing the kind words, and I have to echo her sentiments that if you haven't seen Dave Richards or Dave Eichberg's podcast, take the time to do that. Those two guys are really doing phenomenal things, and I know I joke with Mr. Richards a lot about looking up to him, but I do because it's not easy to take this journey. It's not easy to do this work, but it's the right work, and I get really excited about it when I start to see that growth happening inside of our district. So I entitled this Empowering Educators because that's what we need to do. And this whole idea started from taking smaller pieces and then using that to build better learners. So we're going to kind of walk you through where we are. So to appreciate where we are, it's important to know where we began, because this started 5 years ago when I walked into the district, and change takes work, and it's especially difficult when there isn't a fire to put out. When test scores look good, and the relationships of the few paint a picture for the many. I walked into a highly successful district. I came from a district where we had a fire to put out. ACT scores were bad, achievement was low. Making changes there and moving toward a standards-based world that was going to then move to competency was easier to do there, because what was working was pretty easy to point out that it wasn't, or what was being done wasn't working. And so I came to Hamilton, 22 average ACT score. Things were going really, really well. It's a district that hangs their hat on relationships, but as you started to dig in, those relationships were easy on the surface, but we were really having a hard time getting to all of our kids. And I always talk about all meaning all, and that's a really hard thing for everybody to get their heads around. But it's a really important concept if we're going to change what we're doing in education. So I walked in.
Dave, I'm gonna just interrupt for just 1 second, Dave. We're not seeing your screen. Did you accept? Did you hit that accept? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Look at that. Now should we good?
There we go.
Good there?
Now we are. There.
All
I'm
right.
sorry. Thank you very much.
Well, good, because the other stuff I put up was not important. So this is where we get to the stuff you can really look at. So when I actually came in the middle of the 2011 school year, and this is a district school improvement plan picture of what I walked into. Our motto is a Hamilton education is a personal experience with exceptional results, and I took that to heart, and that's what excited me about coming to the district. And when I looked at this plan that was in place as I looked to transition, it had some areas of focus around data, grading and assessment, and communication. So I thought, wow, things are really lined up in my head and in my heart. I wanted to get to a place where I could move to a fully standards-based situation, because I knew that competency was where I wanted to go down the road. I really wanted to individualize for kids. I wanted the kids that needed to run to be able to run. I wanted the kids that were walking or crawling or doing wherever they were that wasn't going as fast as the norm, to have a model that would allow them to catch up. And the current system just doesn't do that. I think we can all agree to that. You can listen to Sir Ken Robinson. You can talk to lots of other educational leaders out there that talks about the system does exactly what it was built to do, and it was built to sort and separate kids. It was built to batch them. It was built to put a ceiling on what they could do, because the capacity of the system just isn't what it should be. And so I looked at this and I thought, we have an opportunity to really start to push this, and that's what we did. So we went from, that one-page plan, and this personal experience with exceptional results was something, like I said, that I took really to heart. And this was the most exciting piece of this, because I felt like, okay, I walked into a district, they've already done a strategic planning process, they believe in this. This is the right stuff to do. And then my first year, I got my teeth kicked in pretty good, because I was excited about moving this thing forward. And people said, "What? There's nothing to be fixed, and we're okay. Leave us alone." And I said, "Oh, great. Okay, we're going to figure out what this really means." And so it took a while, and it was a rough first year and a half. I overestimated my understanding of the culture of a district, and again, I think that's why some of what you're going to hear with me today is a little bit different, in that the journey and where we are hopefully paints a picture that says that anybody at any place can do this, and there's not a binder for what we're doing. There's not a program you pull off the shelf and you plug in and it works. So this is one of those things that we have to take a look at. So as you saw on the one-page plan, there was an area around grading, and as I walked in, the district had done some work with Ken O'Connor and the 15 Fixes to Broken Grades, and they had started to have some conversations, and I felt like, oh, this is a place that we're moving toward. This is something that people they're buying in. Well, as we started to go, we realized people had read the book and on the surface had done the work, but didn't truly believe in executing that and putting it into place. So we we used grading as the place that we could put our stake in the ground and say, we're going to take a look at grading, and the standards-based model is what gave us that vehicle. We also took a look at assessment. We had goals around assessment. Those things go hand in hand, and we really started to dive in and look at what we had. There were no common assessments. Our curriculum was what most districts' curriculum is, which is laid out for people, but then if you have 10 standards to teach in second grade for ELA, and you start with the first 5 that you really like and that you're good at teaching, and then you hopefully get to all 10, but if you don't, you get to 9, and that one that you missed is the one you missed. Well, when you have 8 different teachers in 8 different elementary classrooms, and they all have a different one that's left over, what kids are getting is inherently gaps in their education. So we had to look at assessments and our grading. We had to start to use data more deeply, and we just didn't have a system to do that. We had a system that raised the red flags. We knew when a kid was struggling, but we weren't using that data to dig deeper to understand what was going on with that student and their learning, and then writing a prescriptive response to that so that each kid can move forward. So all these things were on the front page of what we were looking at, but they just weren't coordinating, and it felt like a number of different things were happening, and we were chasing data work, and we were chasing assessment, and we were chasing grading, and it just felt disconnected. At the same time, we brought in the conversation of grading, started to talk about how are we giving feedback for content, but then also we started to work with the Ottawa area businesses, education, civic, and community leaders, and had a number of forums and dialogue, and we came up with the Skills for Success framework, and this is a framework that you can find on the Ottawa Area ISD's website, and if anybody wants it, feel free at the end to shoot me an email. I can send you the full document. But really it started to look at those skills that we need to go along with the content. So it wasn't that we were throwing out content and that we were just worrying on skills. It's a blend of both of those things, but this was a process that let us identify what those skills were that all students needed to have, and these 3 are just 3 of them. I think there are 8 altogether, and so we were able to start to look at this, build rubrics that go along with each of these. We now are lucky enough to have rubrics that go with all the skills for success, and they're banded developmentally. So we've got an elementary set of rubrics, and then we have a middle school set of rubrics and a high school set of rubrics, and they build upon themselves with a level of complexity as the student matures and gets older. And so all of those things were there. couple that with a phenomenal project-based learning program that our ISD brought in called I Challenge You, and we started to have a number of teachers trained in project-based learning. And so you can start to see in the district there were a lot of moving pieces. There were a lot of things, and all of them are good, but we have a limited amount of time, and people get frustrated, and we do a really good job in education of chasing shiny objects and hoping that somebody's new idea will fix our ills and we'll be okay. So we have all those things moving, and like I said to begin with, change takes work, and so we started to dig into this and take a look at a more systemic view of the work as we went, and we realized, wow, we've got a lot of arrows and they're all pointing in different directions, and we have great people. I have phenomenal people, and they're working really, really hard, and but what, as is normal, they were working on things that resonated with them, and they were building models that worked for them, instead of all of us collaborating and working together. So we looked at some of those skills for success, and we said, gosh, we want kids to be able to collaborate. That doesn't always happen very well with the adults. We need to really look at that as well. So I took all of that and I started to look at the previous work that I'd done, the research that I had done as a leader. I went back. I had spent some time with Bob Marzano when I was in Michigan Center. I had just gotten done reading Hattie's work, really worked on balanced assessment, tried to change time as a constant, had done some work with effective use of data. And as a teacher, I used thematic units to teach, and that was back before we had standards the way that they're written now, and we could really kind of craft and almost design our curriculum as we went, just to make sure and making sure that we hit what we needed to cover and get to deeply. But this thematic unit idea for me was something to hang my hat on. So all of those things were going on in my head at the time that I saw all of these different arrows working and pointing in different directions, which is why we went to standards-based grading. And I referenced Hattie. You know, if you look at his highest yield strategy, a student's ability to self-assess is number one by far and above. And so I struggled with how do we put something in place, and so as you can see here, standards-based grading was that umbrella that we used to put everything underneath of, so that it was a more cohesive process. But the bigger piece for me and the long play in this whole thing, and I'm actually able to start to use the word competency now in the district, because standards-based grading scared people. Competency scares people even more, because it's hard to do that, to let some kids go really fast and some kids be in the middle, and some kids you're trying to catch them up from behind. And so we aren't ready to talk fully about competency, but this, for us, is the foundation and the framework that helps us then build to that. So we looked at standards-based. If you are a standards-based grading purist, this is what we're doing is actually more standards referenced, because we still aren't taking away time fully. I have some programs and some teachers who are, and I'll kind of get to that at the end, but we'll take this first step, and I'm really, really happy with where we are as we start to put an umbrella to the work. As we look at this, we started to talk about common assessments aligned to standards, clarity in the communication of our learning goals, correlations between grades and our standardized scores, navigating our reporting systems, and then the use of assessment tools to benefit student growth. So these are the 5 things that we really started to look at when we put a systemic approach in place for this. And the biggest one is the correlation between grades and standardized scores. One of the things that we found was that we had kids that were 4.0 students, and they had learned how to do school really, really well. But when it came to taking the ACT or some other form of a standardized test, there was not a correlation. They were scoring, you'd have a student that would score an 18 or a 19 on an ACT, and they've got a 4.0. And so we really felt like in this land of nice, and teachers are nice, and that's part of what makes them great in what they do, but that doesn't always give kids good feedback. And so we had kids that were doing the system of school really well and getting good grades, but they were walking out of here not ready for college, a career, or real life. Not not that what school is for them isn't real life, but just that whole idea that I did really, really well. I had never failed before, and now all of a sudden I'm out and things are hitting me and I don't know how to process them. And so we really felt we needed to raise the bar. And in doing that, one of the biggest changes and the things that we have that still today is a hard thing for some of our parents and students to get their heads around is the fact that we've turned the old A into a B. So when we went to standards-based, we put a 4-point system in place, and the 4 is actually that a student can apply the learning. 3 is proficiency. Well, proficiency used to be an A in the old system, and so kids actually have to take another step, and we've raised the level of rigor. And that makes it difficult for teachers because they have to teach to a deeper level, and I'm happy that our teachers are responding really, really well, but it's been tough for some of our parents and some of our students who figured out how in the old system to collect enough points to get an A, and it's not anymore. It's not about point collection. Extra credit doesn't count. There's no extra credit. If what you're giving a student is valuable, then it counts. We're not going to give you something else to do on top of it. If you didn't learn how to apply the standard, you can't go show me that you did some report on something else and get more points that doesn't relate back to the actual application of the standard. And one of my best moments was last year. We were having a student forum with some students who were frustrated with standards-based grading, and a number of kids had said, you know, we're working harder than we've ever worked, and we pulled their grades, and I said, you're getting an A. And he said, yeah, yes, Mr. Tebo, I'm getting an A, but I have to work so much harder now. To which I laughed and smiled and said, thank you. You validated all of the hard work that we've been doing, because that's exactly what I want to hear. It should be difficult to get an A. It should be difficult for us to apply things, and we should have kids that have to struggle and fail, and then we pick them up and dust them off, and we move them forward. So that's been a part of where we're at. And as we moved to this too, we found, you know, the transition to the Common Core or the new Michigan standards and now the NGS standards for science really pointed out that we didn't know all of our standards very well. And not just how well do we know our standards, the teachers, but does the administration know do they know the standards? Do our students know the standards? Do our parents know the standards? And this has really forced our communication to increase. And only when, you know, communication increases is there a clear understanding about what's being communicated. For a long, long time in a traditional system, we give a student an A or a B in whatever content area they're studying, and very, very few times can we actually say what makes up that A or that B. And so when we started to ask teachers and students, you're getting an A, what does that mean to you? Do you know what you know and what you still don't know? If you're getting a B, do you know what you know or you don't know? And that was a really difficult conversation for a lot of people. But once we started now to put this in place, the ability for us to have conversations with each other, teachers to administrators, teachers to teachers, teachers to students, parents to students, all of those things have become easier because now we're all speaking the same language, and we've broken down the big areas of content into those specific standards and are able to say, okay, Mr. Tebo, your daughter understands how to, and this is actually a real life example, she understands how to subtract. She understands the concept of subtraction with 2-digit numbers. But my daughter hasn't memorized her math facts. So she still is counting or doing touch math, and it takes her longer to solve a problem that she's struggling with subtraction. Conceptually, when you sit next to her, she knows how to do it. She struggles with the speed at which she gets it done. And so for the first time, I now really know how to help my child get better as she's working on her mathematical concepts. I know what it is that's in the way. And so while she's got a 1 in an area and my wife gets concerned, I said, that's not something to be concerned about because we know what the problem is. Before, that would have got lumped into something. The teacher would have told us, okay, your daughter's, you know, she's actually, we had a 3-point scale at the elementary, and she probably would have been a 3 because the teacher would have said, okay, she understands it conceptually, and I think she's going to be there by the end of the year. I feel like she's going to be there. And so they would have told me that, and then at the end of the year, she would have gone from a 3 to a 2, because she doesn't really get all of it. And so we would have gone backwards, and we've changed the conversation to talk about this is a growth model, and we were honest with kids about where they are so that we can move them forward instead of saying we think they're going to be a 3 or a 4. We now say, nope, they're a 1 or a 2 right now, and that's okay. We just introduced this. This is a process. We're moving it forward. So the conversation and the communication has been a really good, positive thing that we've seen, and I think is really laying that foundation for us to make the full move to competency-based down the road, because parents are starting to understand the language, and that some kids grow faster in certain areas. Some of that's because they have an aptitude, some of it's because they have an affinity, and sometimes it's because they have both. And so this gives us, we really think, the framework to take that next step. One of the big keys to the kingdom and the work that we've been doing a lot this year, we've brought in Bob Marzano and his research team, and all along throughout the year we've got this ongoing embedded professional development around creating proficiency scales, and so we really had to start to define what this looks like. And we really feel strongly about the proficiency scales because as I look at taking that next step to competency, the proficiency scale gives us the opportunity for the assessment to change. If in the old system what you give as the assessment of knowledge is a single test that's paper pencil, then you're locked into that paper pencil test. When we move to a proficiency scale and now we talk about what a student can do and how they apply, that can look different, and so the test can change because the proficiency scale doesn't, and that's been really freeing for a number of our teachers once they realize that. Yes, we still at times have common assessments to make sure that we're looking at the overall presentation of the curriculum and making sure that we know what's working and what's not working inside of the big picture. But when we start to talk about being able to move them forward faster or support them more slowly because we know where they're struggling, these are the things that are really going to help us do that. And so clarity and communication of learning goals or standards was the other thing that we started to look at. When I had gotten to Hamilton, they had just finished work on learning goals and learning targets, and we really started to take a look at those. And a lot of the targets were task-based, not learning-based. And so, for example, we would go in and we would find a learning target that would say, I can create a diorama to show the interaction of the 3 branches of government. And so, but when we would write them based on the thing, not the learning. Instead of saying, I understand the interaction of the 3 branches of government and can demonstrate that through the creation of a diorama or a trifold brochure or whatever that was. So we really had to start looking at were we creating standards that were student learning based, not task based. And that was this whole transition has been a really good thing for us to get at that, because I think it's a pretty normal thing for teachers to put up task-based learning goals or targets, when really we should be talking about what it is that they're learning, not the thing that they're creating. And we've also found that when we start to focus on the standards, the learning goals really start to take shape. So we use this example of a tree with a root system to kind of show that. And we think that the standards are what is the base, the foundation, the roots of the tree. And as we move up, then we take a look at what are our assessments, what are we using, and then we break it down even smaller into those targets. So the learning targets are the smaller pieces that feed into those assessments that are larger and that get us back to driving at what the standard is actually asking the students to be able to do. And this has been just been a really great conversation for us in terms of teachers really getting in and understanding the standard, because I think as we change to Common Core, those can be difficult to get your head around, but it's really forced us to pick them apart and take a look at them in a deeper way. And so here's an example of one of the things that we've done, with our change. So the standard is down at the bottom. Cite textual evidence and support the analysis of what the text says. Then we start to look at what's the assessment. The students will write an essay exploring the use of the allegory and Animal Farm, and then break it down even further. I can use quotes from the text to explain why George Orwell uses allegory and Animal Farm to comment on leadership and the electorate. So you can kind of see as we start to give them smaller and smaller pieces, but it all builds up and down based off of the process that we put in place. So as we start to take a look then even further into this work, as I shared before, I kind of ran through quickly kind of where we are and what we've done, but as we start to look at where is this having the biggest impact, we've created a school within a school model, and it's called Stream School. It's a partnership with the Outdoor Discovery Center, which is in our backyard, and we are in the process of expanding this even further. It started 2 years ago with a 7th grade cohort, and the whole premise of this is that Stream School, to be a part of Stream School, you have to there has to be 5 things in place. One is that obviously it has to be a standards-based work, and so that's kind of the no-brainer, but we say it all the time in case some teacher says, oh, I can go be a part of Stream School, but I don't have to use standards-based grading because, you know, they do things differently over there than we do in the traditional setting. So we start with that. The other part is that it has to have project-based learning inside of there, and it has to be gold standard project-based learning. We have a certified instructor from the Buck Institute who's a member of the team. And any team that wants to pull together something that would fall under Stream School has to have a trained project-based learning teacher through the Buck Institute. And we talk about gold standard intentionally because we don't want this to, again, just like with the learning targets, we don't want it to be about the task, the thing. We want it to be about the process. And gold standard PBL really focuses on the process, not the thing at the end. This isn't about dessert. This is about the main course, the meal, and how we're teaching kids to think differently and to design, think, and to fail forward. So it has to have project-based learning. It also has to incorporate blended learning because of the way that this works and the fact that we are in this process allowing for a lot of student voice and choice. We're allowing for them to self-pace. We're allowing for them to move through standards quicker. There has to be components of blended learning inside of there so that the onus doesn't fall all on the teacher. Another part that we required inside of Stream School is that it has to be multi-content. It cannot be a standalone content. You can't have a Stream School program that's only math. So, for example, 7th grade is a combination of math and science with electives built in. We have some physical education electives, we have some art electives, we have some technology electives in there. It's a pretty comprehensive thing. 8th grade then became a science and ELA partnership with electives as well, and we are in the stages of, I had a meeting last night. I'm excited to see that I have high school teachers that now are willing to create a classroom, and it's going to be a 3-hour class that will take place after lunch for the student, and it is 9th grade biology, 9th grade English, and then a combination of 3 VPA credits, 1 in Photoshop, and then 1 in web design, and a 3rd in advanced web design. And so these 3 teachers are all starting to plan together. We actually just started to look at our first project for next year, and it's going to be around, and I forget the name of the book, but it's going to be around the story of the lady who had the first cancer biopsy. And so they're going to tie in genetics. They're going to tie in a number of different things. I won't even start to try to guess what they were right now off the top of my head, but we had a conversation. So we're really excited and this is, again, is going to let kids move forward faster. The more standards we can tie into a theme or a concept, the faster we can move some kids along. And it also gives them voice and choice inside of it. So this is the vehicle that we're using to start to move toward that competency model, and letting kids start to click through the things that they need to be able to do to be that learner we want them to be when they walk out at the end of their 12th grade year. And so I share all of that journey along the way to tell you where we're getting to and then bring you here to this to say this is the space and the place that we really feel like we're pushing the envelope. The other side of it, and the last thing I forgot to share about Stream School, the other non-negotiable, is that a portion of student and teacher time has to be out of the traditional classroom, and that really isn't defined. We have like I said, a partnership with our local nature center. They can go. There's a field lab there that we've retrofitted with science equipment. A partnership with Hope College and their graduate level and college level student teachers, and so the whole idea there though is that these teachers and these learners are not inside of a traditional classroom, cinder blocks, industrial paint, desks in rows. The classrooms are actually very large, flexible spaces that are inside of our school buildings, and then they need to go outside. And we really feel that that's an important piece as we look at the research around physical movement and play and getting kids out and all the research that has been done around how our brains function after physical movement and exercise. So this builds that into there. So we really feel like it's a combination of the best of a bunch of different worlds. It puts teachers in a collaborative environment. It exposes them to other content areas. They become more well-rounded educators as they learn about other content area and subjects. And our students, again, are able to, when they start to look at their projects, our teachers are really adept at laying multiple standards onto a project. And the more a kid can take, the more standards we are able to lay on. And again, that then gets to that whole competency model of as we move them through quicker and they can take more, we give them more. And so this doesn't put a ceiling on the students' learning. And at the same time, it's a great environment for us to give feedback on those skills for success that I had referenced to you before, because all of that is just built into the process. So we're at a point where we really feel strongly that the arrows are lined up and that we have the tools in place to give a personal experience with exceptional results to our students. We've seen a rise in achievement. Hope College is partnering with us, and they're doing research on our Stream School. We have our first set of data back on the original 7th grade students. And as we looked at their standardized test scores and those things that all kids take, the Stream School kids, which I have to mention are also a representative sample of the grade as a whole. We have special education students in there. We have at-risk students. We have students that are average, I guess you'd say, or middle of the road. And then we have some high achievers in there as well. So we've got a good cross section of what the rest of the building looks like. And the kids in the Stream School scored at or above where all of the other students in a traditional model have scored, and they have all of this value add in terms of the skills for success. They have to present. They've got problem-solving skills. They've got community, and we have collected a ton of anecdotal data around that as well, and that's in the Hope College study. And the thing, that some people say, well, okay, so they're at or slightly above where their peers are in a traditional setting. Okay, wonderful, well, good for them. Why are you so excited? I'm so excited because normally, for those of us who implement anything new, there's usually an implementation dip. Usually in that first year, there's a step backward. As we put in these new teaching styles and these new processes, we usually go backwards. And the fact that we didn't go backwards, that we actually stayed at or above where the others are, that to me is a really exciting piece, because I feel like the foundation is strong, and you put that with the value add and the ability for us to give feedback on those skills for success in a more explicit way. We feel like that this is a value add. It's not that it's better than something else, and because that's a really tough thing inside of schools. We don't paint pictures of this is better, because that can tend to ruin culture. So we really focused on saying that this is a program that can engage disengaged kids because of the manner in which we lay it out, but it is also a way for us to move kids forward faster, and a way for us to focus specifically on some of those things that are not just content related. And I know this is the piece for us that's building the foundation for a transition to competency-based. If you've watched these webinars, I think Dave talks about this. We're really looking at where content and context and skills come together, and then when we look at the students, we're giving them voice and choice, and we're changing the pace, and we're using creative space. I think one of the things that I've said for a long, long time, and people around here get tired of hearing me say it, if we don't change the learning environment, we learned in an environment that was teacher at the front, desks in rows, like everything in the classroom looks pretty much the same as you go from room to room. Now each teacher obviously decorates a little different and puts their flair on it, but the bones of a school look pretty traditional. If we don't start to change those spaces, we can put some really good things in place, but we're conditioned almost to revert back to, if the space around us doesn't change, we revert back to that teaching modality that we were most comfortable with and that we grew up in. Because for a lot of this, like I said before, this is hard work, and it's hard not because it's anybody's fault, but because this is the model in which we've worked for a long, long time, and it's hard to imagine something different than what we've had. And so I hope that what we're doing right now is painting a picture for others to be able to see that you can do things differently. I hope my teachers continue to hear me say that I want them to innovate, I want them to push the envelope, I want them to do something different. I hope we've created a safe space for that to happen. But as always the case in educational settings, culture is tough. And the crab in the bucket analogy comes out every once in a while. When that crab starts to crawl out of that bucket, the rest of them grab him and pull him back in. Get back in this bucket with us. It's safer down here. But we have to, as leaders, we really have to empower our teachers to do those things that they are continuing to learn about and move forward and do more engaging things for kids, because we have the opportunity to free our kids from the traditional model of time and one size fits all. But to do that, we have to create the environment where that's safe to do, and other people like Dave Eichberg and Dave Richards and those other districts in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and other places across the country need to continue to paint the picture of what's possible, because unfortunately there are a lot of us, and I was in that camp for a while too, that couldn't understand what this looked like, and it's hard to take a leap to something that you don't know what it looks like. And so we almost are in a point where we're providing, I think, schema for leaders and teachers to hang what could be for them on. We have to give them something different and show them a vision of what it could be. And like I said to Marcia before when we were getting ready to go on today, people have at times introduced me as a reform guy, and I'm not a reform guy. I don't want to play around the edges. I want us to create something that's better. I want us to leapfrog that what we have to what we can be. Dave Richards shared the book Inevitable: The Mass Customized Learning in the Age of Empowerment with me, and I saw it on his webinar, and I encourage anybody who listens to this to read that book. We're in the process of doing that with my board, and it's really changing the way that my board of education, people who care about our school because we're the center of this community, but don't always sign up to be on the school board because they want to do research about school and the future of school and what school could be. They are really starting to open up and look at some things differently, and I think it's something that it paints a picture of a reality that is truly possible if we have the will to make this happen for kids. And it's a conversation for boards of education, for administrators, for teachers. But I think the last thing I kind of leave you with is that it's a conversation for us in society, because everybody went to school. Everybody knows how to do school, and they all know, and to some extent, everybody romanticizes what their schooling was like. Unfortunately, even for kids who struggled, it's probably a lot of times painted as something better than what it was, because it really was a one-size-fits-all model. And we did sort and separate kids, and we still do. And that time has passed. And so I'll end with that I challenge everyone to keep pushing for us to provide something different than what we've done. We can do better. We can reach all kids. We can get them all college, career, and life ready. And I won't advocate for any one over the other. The bottom line is we want to send out kids who are lifelong learners, who have a growth mindset and know what and how they learn, so that they can constantly put themselves in the best situation for where they want to be and what they want to do. So with that, I'll share at the end if anybody has questions, or obviously I'll answer them here now, but if you have down the road, I want to share. We talk about ourselves being an open book, and we really are. My email address is there. I'm on Twitter at Tebo Tweets. I've got a LinkedIn page. My blog is also listed. I have to admittedly say we've been working on so many other things. I haven't blogged in a while, but that's there at some point. I'll get back to it. And then the last link is a link to a TEDx talk that I gave here on the Lakeshore, which again talks a lot about what we can do and how do we change this with partnerships and collaboratively together. So I look forward to hopefully connecting with some of you that are here, because this is a heavy lift. It's not fun to do it alone. And I think that together we can do things on a bigger picture, on a grander scale, and hopefully start to impact legislation. And like I said, the way that society looks at school and the way that we value our teachers, because if we continue to devalue those people who are most precious to our kids, it's really, really hard to get them to take a risk and to do something different from what they've always done. So with that, I'll say thanks, and I appreciate the opportunity to share. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thanks, Dave. Wow. That's all I just kept thinking was, wow. This has been fascinating. And, what is equally interesting to me is that everyone is becoming aware of the long journey. It's not just a journey, it's a long one. And sometimes you don't even know that that's where you're heading, which is kind of, in a way, what's happened with you guys. I've said before that in our lives we create a lot of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and then sometimes they come together in something we never anticipated. And I dare say that's what's happened, in a lot of the districts that we're looking at, how to create change and how to, really individualize and personalize for kids. And it ends up, kind of more conversation wrapped around the competency. I appreciate, and as I said, it's a long journey. One of our presenters in the first series said, at least a 10-year journey. And, we all want things to happen yesterday, but, when you can look back 10 years ahead and know that you did the, what needed to be done, that feels good, because you're making changes along the way, too. It's not like it's a one until you get to the end of the trip, until you enjoy it. You're making a difference along the way. Are there any comments, questions, anything that anyone would like to ask of Dave, or just make a comment in general?
Marcia, can Dave, one of the things that I know you guys are a pretty high-achieving district, and we talk about the good to great challenge all the time. What would you say, as superintendent, is the most challenging piece in leading that culture shift to kind of go away from that traditional structure and move more towards a competency-based model?
I think it's really it's number one, it's communication. I think the biggest part, and Marcia had mentioned a little bit, one of the things, I want to go fast. I'm a fast guy, and so the speed at which change happens is something that personally I've had to learn how to get better at. But Karen McPhee said to me in one of my mentor meetings with her, Dave, you've got to go slow to go fast. And so I think it's really important. For the first year and a half, 2 years, I wanted to go fast, and we were actually going backwards because the culture was fighting me. Because there's a fear that in that change and in moving that forward, that we're going to expect that teachers do it alone, and we really had to slow down. The most momentum we've had has really been this year, because we stopped chasing other things yes, there are still things that are going on that teachers we're letting them innovate and follow different paths. But as a district, we said this is the work that we're going to do. We're going to do this over time, and we're going to commit to you, teachers, that we're going to support you along the way. We've had to give a lot of release time. We've had to come up with creative ways to get teachers together in the summer. We're actually now looking at trying to find ways to get them together on the weekends after school in the summer so that we're not taking them out of the classroom. But we've had to slow it down to that point of giving them the time so that it feels safe for them, because a majority of them understand, and I think they're frustrated too with the fact that they can't reach all kids, and they don't know how to do it differently while we're doing school on the fly. The analogy of we're building a plane while we're flying it. We have to continue to provide education for all these kids while we're trying to redefine a model at the same time. It's almost, you're almost doing two sets of work, and that compiled with the what's being legislated to teachers and society's view of teachers. A lot of them are, we're saying, why am I going to do this? Why am I going to put this work and this effort in to change and be different? So we've really found that as the ones who are really running now are the ones that we're supporting them. They feel supported. The communication of the plan, I think that was early on. Some missteps that I made was not communicating clearly what we were doing, where we're going to go next, and the fact that I can't say enough to my teachers. This is a 3 to 5 year transition for the standards-based part. That's without getting to the next step of competency. We've said this is from last year. We started to say this is a 3 to 5 year process, and that's helped them to know that they don't have to change overnight, that they're going to be supported. I hope that answered the question, but I really think it's a matter of taking away as much fear, communicating clearly where we're going, and letting them know that they're not alone. I had a teacher it's a year and a half ago now at our back-to-school meeting say, Dave, we get what you're saying to us. We get it. You want us to collaborate. You want us to be a team. You want us to do this together. I got to be honest, we feel like we're playing a game of Survivor. And that really kind of hit home, because we had to manage. It wasn't that we made them feel like they were playing Survivor, but the system and the way that it's changed, they were afraid, because with this high stakes testing and student growth falling on their lap, and I'm saying, hey, we're going to do something a little different. They're going, no, I'm going to go to what's tried and true, and I know it can get me this level of result. And if that means I'm in the middle and I'm proficient and I'm acceptable, I'll take that. I don't need to be highly effective. I'll just be effective. Let me do what I've always done and be effective versus let's take that next step to be highly effective, because their fear is if in the process of jumping to highly effective, they could fall back to minimally effective. And so that's a tough thing that I think we all have to navigate.
And I think it's not just education. I was listening, Dave, to a talk on NPR yesterday from the police chief in Denver who was on a national board, and he was saying the world has changed, society has changed, policing has changed, but a lot of the police themselves didn't change, and therefore there's a lot of criticism of police, and the response to that has been that the police have dug in more deeply to their traditional ways of doing things, and that's the problem they're trying to overcome. And so there's a lot of parallel there. So I really applaud you for recognizing that your teachers need support, because they're the keys to all this.
Yeah, they're the keys to the kingdom. They're the ones that make this work. And if they, the ones that feel safe and the ones that feel empowered, they're doing just some phenomenal things. And I think that would probably be true about all the districts that we are kind of talking about doing this. I know Dave Richards, I would imagine that the same is probably true for you.
Yeah, that buy-in, the systemic level of it is critical, so that it's not just central office is kind of pushing out a belief system. It has to resonate with teachers at the edge. They have to share that belief so that you have shared leadership, and the vision for where you want to go as a school district, because as we all know, superintendents come and go. Our life expectancy on the job is not that great. So if it's not a core belief of the community and of the organization, I think you can see that your timelines, but also your invisible turnstiles kick up like crazy, and you run into blocks and challenges that you never anticipated.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this year it's been really interesting. One of the best things that has happened for us this year has been the feat, because now we finally got we've worked with Power School to get the standards-based grading into our report card. So now it really is looking like a standards-based report card, and so the specificity in which our teachers have been able to give parents feedback at conferences has been phenomenal. And the number of parents who have said to me and to teachers and to my board of ed, this was the best parent-teacher conference I've ever had. I know my child as a learner better than I've ever known them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, that validation has been a huge, huge pat on the back for a lot of our people.
We do have another question, Dave, that just came through. How does online education fit into this?
Yeah, and so online has been something that, and when I'm done, I'm gonna, if Dave Richards wants to chime in, he can too, because I think one of his models is really good. But we have online classes, and we've built online learning into this, and we're in the process now of, I've got teachers who want to design the online classes so that they match the work that we're doing. One of the things that we have seen is that there are some savvy students who want to take an online class because they're looking for the traditional model or that easier A, versus what we're doing in the standards-based world, where we've raised the rigor and we've really started to talk about application. I think so. We've really started to have to look at the classes that we offer to kids online, so that we know that it matches the rigor of what we want. And so that's a tricky thing that we're really starting to navigate. The unique part that's a little different about Hamilton is that prior to me getting here, online education was there was few and far between. There's that fear that teachers are going to lose their jobs when so many kids can just go take an online class. That, I don't know if that was what permeated it here, but there just wasn't a lot of online learning going on. It's grown almost exponentially since I've gotten here, because we've been able to find good quality stuff. But it's something that you have to manage. And I would say, in a perfect world, my teachers would be the ones that create the online classes. And that we have enough of an offering via that online work that we could provide both with our staff and our teachers. We're not there yet, but that's an important piece, because we did find that there were kids that were figuring this out, like, oh man, I got to work harder in English 10 for these two teachers. But there's my buddy told me about it. He took English 10 online and as a makeup, as a credit recovery, and it was way easier. And so I'd like to do that instead. So I think it's something you got to wrestle with. And I know, Dave, do you want to chime in? I think you had said that your teachers, you've created those, correct?
Yeah, you know what? I just texted my high school principal, who's on the call as well, and told him to chime in here, because he's got some great insight. Mike Lanza, are you there?
Yes, Dr. Richards, can you hear me?
Yeah, yep. If you could, just kind of give your thoughts with the online and the transformation to standards-based and then towards competency-based.
Thank you. We believe in the online learning here at the high school and in Fraser, but the approach that we took was much more of the hybrid approach, so that we could continue to blend the best of both worlds. You'd have your face-to-face time, and then you'd also have that opportunity to allow kids to discover their learning on their own. And that way we could bring smaller cohorts of kids together that were much more homogeneous, and we could really go into depth with the holes that they had in their learning to try to make sure that we could shore that up. I found it interesting, Dave, as I listened to you speak, that it seems like a lot of schools, including our own at the high school, went through this transition from the standards-based, and what really resonated with me was when you talked about getting to that level. We all kind of figured out we weren't really as knowledgeable as what we thought we were about the standards, and then took that for some time to really soak that in, and then slowly moved into this concept of the competency-based. And I see that as a common thread. I'm not sure if you've seen the same thing as you've talked to other schools.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing some of that same type of stuff, because really to get to that level of competence, you have to know those standards inside and out, and that's a tough thing for us to wrestle with. And we like to say, yep, I know those standards. As we started to pull them apart, we found a number of areas that things that were core to the work were not being addressed, and we had to wrestle with that conversation first.
For sure. I couldn't agree more, and you see that, at least we have, as that really focused learning, focused on that standard, and then slowly building to those much bigger concepts where Dr. Richards and Ms. Wozniak have really been pushing my thinking on that conceptual competency, those cross-cutting competencies that are going to get you to that interdisciplinary thematic idea.
Yeah, and that's been the fun part right there. That's the stuff where you really because then to watch teachers start to, when you get that cross, for them to collaborate and start to do things together and say, oh my gosh, if I put this together, I can get to a level of depth that I never would have been able to get to on my own. That was part of the conversation I had with my stream school teachers yesterday. It was like there were light bulbs going off. Like, oh my gosh, we could do this, which would open a door to do. We'd never even been able to think about doing that before. That's the fun part. I mean, that's the really exciting piece of that. And it's forced us. One of the other tough things was when we started to make the change. We look at the standards and not because this is a bad thing, and I don't say that, but teachers would try to take what they had done in the past and force it into a standard. And it was like, no, guys, you're going to have, that doesn't fit. We thought that it fit. On the surface it looks like that. So they were trying to take what they were already using and fit it into this model, instead of saying, all right, shoot, we're gonna have to pick this thing apart and really look at it. Almost, when you look at it like a design thinking experience for teachers, that's pretty empowering. It's work, and it's heavy lifting, but the outcome is 10 times better than what we were doing. Because we've had lots of conversations around. If it was up to me, I'd throw out every textbook that I have in terms of walking through it with a pacing guide and a scope and sequence and that whole piece, because the ownership of that isn't there for teachers. When we give them a textbook and a teacher walks through that textbook chapter at a time, they didn't design that. The ownership isn't there. So we've really started to find that when we start by looking at those standards and then working backwards and creating, this is what we want them to do. This is the proficiency scale at the end. Now, what experiences do we create for kids that are diverse in nature, that allow them different ways to show us, mastery or application of that standard?
Dave, there was another question in the chat. It says, a culture of fearlessness seems so integral to a shift of this scale. What do you believe is the single largest example that your staff would highlight as to why they don't fear the shift to CBE?
Well, I think a number of them just fear it. I think the other, I would hope, and I don't know this for a fact, I would hope that those who have lost their fear trust us, that it's a trust in the leadership, that we are going to meet them where they are and help them get to where they need to be. And honestly, that, I've got 138 teachers, something like that. I could walk through the building and tell you the number of teachers that I think would say that. And it started, and that's all comes from my engagement with them, a conversation of, let's sit down and talk through this. And my director of teaching and learning, sitting down with them and saying, we're going to do this together. When they come and work on things, and it's kind of unique here. They come to when we have a work day, they come to my office and they work in the conference room in my office. So it's nice for me to be able to walk down. My director of teaching and learning walks down, and we sit in there with them, and we have conversations. And when they run into a roadblock, or they've got this idea that they want to try, they bounce it off of us, and then once we start to talk, we give them more ideas. And then what was this little idea of maybe I got an idea of doing it this way, but I'm a little nervous. When they start to see us throwing out ideas and options, we're putting ourselves out there right there with them, and I think that increases the level of trust.
Thanks, Dave. Does anyone else have any questions? This has been excellent. I appreciate those of you who are able to be on with us live, because that will makes the whole experience better for those of us who are here, and then those of us who listen to the archived version. So I appreciate that. If there are no other questions, oh my gosh, I just thank you so much, Dave Tebo. This has been excellent. I encourage all of you to go to our website, not only so you can view this again and view the other ones, but so that you can see our schedule for the upcoming webinars. We've got Dave Richards, who's been on this morning with us, and that is March 16th at 9 a.m. And then, oh, Lisa, can you remind me, we changed the one for Mike Birdie. It's April 22nd. Does that sound right, Lisa?
I'll look it up here.
Okay. We really appreciate all of you joining us this morning, and the excitement. I love so many ideas swimming through my head right now. I almost can't grab a hold of many of them. Did you find it, Lisa, or should we just?
No, go ahead. I'm looking for it.
Okay.
The 14th. Yep.
I have it on the 14th.
Yep, it is.
Oh yes, that's right. That's that week that we're all over the place. Yep. Thanks so very much. So thank you, Dave Tebo, Dave Richards. We're looking forward to next month with you.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you
all.
Yep. Great job. Thanks.
Thanks.